Episode 342, or if it's a 3, it's Earnhardt. If it's a 42, it's Lee Petty. Welcome to the show, the 5 to Go podcast here, and we're coming to you late in the week. We've had a lot going on this week, so I'm your co-host, Doug Fireball Turnbull from the Traffic Team at 11 Alive with Rachel Cox-Rosen, Atlanta Journal-Constitution Gridlock Guy columnist, which only has a couple more print editions left that I get my column in print before it's only digital starting in 2026 for the AJC. And glad to be on with you this week. I say glad. I'm glad to be in a venue talking racing with our panel here, whom I'll introduce in a moment. It is tough to be so excited when, to me, it seems like, and this is an opinion, but to me, it seems like there's a lot of just angst and bad news really oozing out of Charlotte with the beginning of and now the middle of the trial, the antitrust suit of 2311 at Front Row Motorsports versus NASCAR. We're not going to say that before we introduce Devin and Dan. We're not going to get into this, all the play-by-play. There are hours and hours of podcasts from the Teardown, Jeff Gluck, and Jordan Bianchi alone to go through the literally about 100 plus pages of notes each one of those has taken over the testimony. We're going to run down what some of our impressions are after the testimony we've seen. As we record this on Friday afternoon, December 5th, Michael Jordan is supposed to be on the stand, who will be one of the top flight people in, well, the whole world, and certainly testifying in this civil suit. So we're going to get to that here in just a moment. We also have a little bit of news. Snowball Derbies this weekend, Pensacola. We've got some truck silly season things shaking out, and then a big departure from Joe Gibbs Racing, as if the news for big-time race teams wasn't weird enough this week with all the trial dirty laundry getting aired. So stepping right in, he's in his Jets gear, looks like. Right? That is JET. No,
yes.
Is that not Jets?
Yes, it is.
It's
our rival. We're wearing our rivalry uniforms this weekend. I'm all decked out. I'm ready to go. Gotham City football. We got the Brees Hall jersey behind me. We got our rivalries look. And you see this pattern and design right here? I want you to take a guess what Nike decided to design this after, because it each has a city element for the 8 teams that are doing it this year.
Well, just hit us with it. I'm already confused.
A manhole cover.
The manhole cover.
Yep.
It's
a design of it. You see, it's got like the texture.
Yeah, I like that. Okay. You're talking to the traffic guy. I gotcha. By the way, that is a lot of detail. Before we even said his name, Devin Kupka, our roving racing journo, our super racing fanalist. The guy that dives into the numbers and the stories, gets nerdy with the TV stuff. I love that. He's here with us, University of North Georgia graduate. Respond right here. Hire Devin Kupka. He is going to go broke if he keeps buying merch without a job. Hire Devin, okay? But Devin, good to have you on. And, of course, our championship-winning mechanic, 2018 Georgia Racing Hall of Fame inductee. He makes those gears spin and go in the right harmonic, all right? And he's got a lot to share with us this week about some of his impressions of some of these numbers that have hit the bench there. Dan Elliott, you doing well, buddy?
Doing well. I hope everybody else is. I know the weather has definitely cooled off for us, and feeling the chill right now.
I was out in the chill this morning for several hours. Fanned across Metro Atlanta. I'm at the station I work for now, 11 Alive, and partnered with the Salvation Army, whom just about everybody's heard of, I do believe, to help combat hunger in their 43rd annual Canathon. And I was out in the 43-degree misty muck that was this morning here in Georgia, and still is, frankly, right now. That's why I've got this shirt on, which I got for $3, different price than the Nike gear there that Devin's got. Okay, but that's a big deal. By the way, shout out 11alive.com. You can go there and donate to the Canathon, whether it's money or actual cans. They've stopped taking the donations in person now, but please go and do that. Help someone this holiday season. Help someone outside of yourself this holiday season, whatever it is you try to do. All right, so last week's show.
Wait, we can't go forward with the show until we say happy birthday to Doug. And
hey, thank you.
Celebrated what? Celebrated the what yesterday?
Sterling Marlin, baby. Sterling Marlin, 4-0. That's correct. Or Landon Castle,
that might
if you
be
prefer.
22.
No, no, and we're cooking Dan because Dan remembers when I was 18. All right, so
Yep.
we're cooking Dan hard. Yeah, no, celebrated the 4-0 the day before this show. That's one of the reasons I was like, guys, we're not doing a December 4th show, okay? And it was
Hey, we've
good.
done shows on my birthday before.
That's fine, and you could have said no. That's great. But also, I was just on the struggle bus the early hours this week. So Momo and I actually went to a 4:30 movie on Thursday afternoon, my birthday, to see the movie Rental Family, which I highly recommend, with Brendan Fraser. Rental Family. It's excellently done, and it's wholesome too. There's like very little cursing in it. It really is very good.
I thought
Rental
you might have
Family.
seen Zootopia too.
Zootopia 1 was amazing, so I would go see Zootopia 2. I would.
I saw
mean, I might wait till
Zootopia 2 in Dawsonville over the weekend.
Ooh.
Devin, you're living your best life right now, man. You're living your best life.
It wasn't my
Him
idea.
and Dan
With friends, but I mean, yeah,
Dua
that's
Lipa.
what you got. That's what happens when you have time on your hands.
That is what happens. You go broke. That's exactly right when you have time on your hands. No, that's
Yeah,
cool,
but you
man.
do live your best life.
Devin's been doing Friendsgiving without the softball team, by the way. Friendsgiving. I mean, it's been big. So, and Dua Lipa, his most listened to artist. Was that the Spotify rap, right?
Yeah. Fifth year in a row. She's turning into Jimmy Johnson.
But here's the deal. It said 666 minutes listened to. That's only like 10 hours.
I don't listen.
Do you
to
not
Spotify
listen to much
as
music?
I
Is
listen
that
to
why?
radio way more than I do Spotify, but
My man.
it's still impressive though. 666 minutes, top 1% in the world. So
That's fair. That's fair. And by the way, that means the apocalypse is coming. So 666.
A
There you
couple
go.
years
Not
ago,
67.
in 21, it was like 3,000 minutes listened, and I was 0.05% of listeners. And I calculated it at the time. I was in the top 36, 32,000, around there.
So when we say super fanalist, we mean whatever he's a fan of, he's a super fan. All right. So he dives into the numbers. That's exactly it. So that's
You want
big.
a
That's
Jets
big.
number too? I can give you a Jets number.
Let's get a Jets number before
Jets are on
mercifully get
pace
into this
to have,
lawsuit.
believe it or not, at a 3-9 record, are actually on pace to have the 5th best special teams unit in NFL history.
Wow. And to think that the Falcons special teams is what cost them a win against said New York Jetropolitans. Okay, that's big. That's big. That is a number. I thought you were about to say the 5th most in the NFL. I was like, okay, no, you meant in history. Oh, different story. So I want to go this route and ask you guys, especially Devin. I just feel like you, maybe even more than me and Dan, see, especially people your age, when you're out at Friendsgiving last week, when you're with your buddies this week seeing Zootopia, when you're at the McDonald's, if you're not working at Culver's, you're at the Dawsonville McDonald's just waiting on Dan to show up and buy you a fried pie. Are people at all even aware that one of the most popular athletes of all time is suing an entire sport?
Actually, yes. Well, look at this right here on SportsCenter on ESPN right there.
Okay. Hey, my man's
Jeff
doing
Gluck's
two
doing a
screens.
live report, so it's actually made CBS News. It's now on
Wait, hold
SportsCenter.
on. Jeff Gluck is doing a live report on ESPN?
Yeah, SportsCenter at 2 o'clock. If you saw his post on X,
I didn't.
there he is. See, look.
Obviously. Wow. And to think Bob Pockrish used to be the guy. Okay.
Yep.
Well,
But I would say in terms of so the only ways, if you're not really into NASCAR, CBS News did a story about it a few days ago. ESPN's doing one right now on SportsCenter, and this is within what would be considered the B block if this was a newscast.
Sure.
So it's up there. I think nobody's really Brett brought up anything, unless they're already watching NASCAR, I haven't really heard too much about the lawsuit outside
Right.
of people that are in the know about it, essentially.
And I think it's intriguing for what it can mean for other sports, much like, I mean, the NCAA rulings in recent years, or the sports gambling stuff that got ruled upon a couple of years before that. It's interesting to me that it doesn't break through, and evidence of it there. And again, I don't want to get too far deep down. I really want to get to the suit itself. Is I hadn't heard a word about it on 11 Live. All right. Granted, we're not a sports station, but I thought certainly, and we also don't do a ton of national news, right? We're very local focused in general, and that's not a rub. That's true. And in our morning meeting on Thursday, I said, hey, they're like, any more story pitches? I was like, well, and I literally led off with, I know y'all probably don't care about NASCAR, but is anybody aware that Michael Jordan and a future NASCAR Hall of Famer, Denny Hamlin, are suing the entire sport? And a couple of people, and afterwards, one of the producers, and again, it didn't get mentioned again after I said it. All right, I'm sure they didn't do the story. I didn't get to watch yesterday evening, but afterwards, one of the producers who likes a lot of sports is like, "You're right, that's a good story." So I bet today, with MJ on the stand,
That'll move
that maybe it makes it. But it's weird. Nobody even knows about it. Even casual racing fans, I know, I have to tell them what's going on. So now, but if you are a NASCAR fan, all right, you're not coming to 5 to Go to get the play-by-play. I think that Jordan Bianchi and Jeff Gluck have done an incredible job on the teardown, an hour-plus breakdown each day, because there are no cameras in the courtroom. There's no Wi-Fi in the courtroom. They're having to write all this stuff down by hand. Bob Pockris, Fox Sports, Matt Weaver at motorsport.com, and several others. Alan Cavana's been down there for PRN, MRN, and for Max, TNT, and all that. You're very fortunate as race fans to have such dedicated beat reporters on there, so dive into it. Hopefully people will pick up. Maybe they will once the ruling happens. So we're maybe what we thought would be halfway through this today. 10-day trials, what they planned on. Looks like it's going to go longer. In fact, according to Gluck and Bianchi, Judge Kenneth Bell actually scolded, or at least critiqued, both the plaintiffs and the defendants being NASCAR in this case, both of them, though, on this is going way too long. And imagine if Kenneth Bell listened to 5 to Go after I stopped talking. He'd say the same thing. Devin's nodding his head. But it's worth noting they were like, they're not even halfway through the witness list or something along those lines, on the plaintiff side, the 2311 side. And Roger Penske supposedly could only testify on NASCAR's behalf on Monday. And Kessler, the main attorney on the 2311 front row side, said, we're not going to be done yet, and they were trying to get Penske wedged in the middle of the plaintiff's case. All right, just a little detail there amongst many others that the Gluck and Bianchi reported on. So that said, we have no idea which way this is going to go, but we've heard a lot. All right, now if I leave somebody out, you guys correct me, okay? Because I'm going off the top here. I don't have it written down. We let off with Denny Hamlin. All right. And there was a number he mentioned. I said, do what? You probably know which one it is if you're a student enough to listen to this podcast. We've had Denny Hamlin. We've had Scott Prime, who's the strategy wonk at NASCAR. Used to work for an accounting firm that the Race Team Alliance, the RTA, hired to go over the numbers, and NASCAR hired her. That's pretty interesting. Scott Prime. Next was Bob Jenkins, owner of Front Row Motorsports, and maybe who might have had, for somebody who people don't know a lot about, might have had some of the most revealing testimony, or maybe put NASCAR on the ropes a little bit and how they treated him. That was the third. Then we've had Steve O'Donnell, who is now the president of NASCAR. Used to be the chief operating officer. Steve Phelps is now the commissioner. Steve O'Donnell, now the president. So Steve O'Donnell has been with the sport since 1998 or something like that. All right. Steve O'Donnell. Heather Gibbs, who is Ty Gibbs' mom, Joe Gibbs' daughter-in-law, and represents a lot of the business interest. I don't mean as an attorney, but just has a lot to do with the business of Joe Gibbs Racing, and apparently also a real estate developer too. Heather Gibbs wrote a letter to NASCAR. That's why she got subpoenaed, including this. That was, very critical of how the process was going. Okay? Heather Gibbs. And then now today, Michael Jordan. Have I missed anybody? Okay.
I don't think so.
Now imagine these are like 7 and 8 hour days at least. Imagine being a jury plus the alternate, that one poor juror, because there are only 6 jurors, I think, in this case, that one poor alternate that's like having to think, oh my God, I only have to know this stuff if they need me. This sucks. Okay. But yeah, that's who's been on the stand. Now, I could what we're going to go into now are really our opinions. All right. If I back anything up with fact, I'll let you know. But I want to ask you guys, and I'll go to you first, Devin. I know Dan has strong opinions too. After what you've heard from Hamlin, from Jenkins, from Prime and O'Donnell and Gibbs, Heather Gibbs, we have not heard Jordan's testimony yet. Do you walk away with any impressions, Devin? Is there anything that's changed about your opinion going into this that you've had now after 4 or 5 days?
The opinions that have changed is just some more of the stuff that's come out and what's been said on the stand, sides that actions have had on certain sides. One thing I look at is NASCAR, particularly. I think it was on Wednesday. They got in trouble in court. Nothing severe or anything, but if one of the two sides, the teams or NASCAR, does something, you could see maybe a contempt of court come up or something like that. But certainly that was an issue on Wednesday. That kind of influenced a little bit of where things are going. It kind of felt like early in the week that things were more in favor of the teams. I feel like things have leveled out a little bit since then. Really hard to say who's going to win this court case. It's just tough because, and we'll get into it more, but it's all depending on what we are seeing and maybe what we don't see with some of the reports, financials, with both sides pertaining both the NASCAR and the teams about their operating costs, because it's some things don't add up, but we'll get more into that. But it's hard to say what the feeling is right now. If you asked me this Wednesday night, I'm like, NASCAR is going to lose this court case. Now, it could go either way, I feel like.
And keep in mind that they haven't even called their own witnesses yet.
Yeah.
Right? So it's easy to think that because – and I want to admit to that point, I'm pretty impressionable. You know, I don't know that I have – like a strong opinion on this. I have been sort of more sympathetic with the teams over this because NASCAR has over the years ruled with an iron fist, and I don't like that in life in general, whether it's corporate or any, household, whatever. I don't like that. But I'm impressionable enough to where pretty much any argument I hear any lawyer say, and most of what the witnesses have been coached to say, I'm going, yeah. It's kind of frustrating. Each day I walk out like, this is going to be a tough one. That's sort of how I feel. And another thing to your point, Devin, about the numbers, before we get to you, Dan, is last week I did my best to go and look at the numbers that I'd seen other reporters publish of the document dumps, and maybe some of their analysis was really looking just straight at the lines. And the way I read it was that Front Row Motorsports had operated with a profit, a bigger profit even than 2311. And that's what we said here on the podcast. And then in the trial, it was just matter of fact that they've lost a ton of money. And I don't know what I read wrong, so I apologize for us getting that wrong last week. I say us, the show, getting that wrong last week. But it just shows that these numbers, they could say a lot of different things. And, Dan, you made that point a week ago. The numbers. And what numbers do we not know? So to you, Dan, and I know that the more and more this goes on, I feel like it grinds on you more and more, it seems like.
Yeah. The question being is, have I noticed anything out of any of the testimony that would sway me in any way, shape, or form or make me think it's going to go one way or another? No, I don't see anything that's come out that's detrimental or not to be argued or swayed away from. I feel like from the beginning of this, it's going to come down to what I said a few minutes ago about the fact that it's going to come down to the jury and the judge as to how this is going to sift out, because I haven't seen anything out of this that really was a big surprise to me. And unless some whistleblower with hard proof on either side comes out and they can flush that out, whether they think it's there or whether they don't. They're trying to flush something out, obviously, because all we're doing is rehashing over and over the same statements, more or less, that we've heard for the last month about how this is going to be and what they're going to bring out. And I don't see anything really detrimental so far on either side. And the only thing that I've seen out of this is Bob Jenkins' losses. And it is amazing to me that if they've lost this amount of money, how on God's green earth you must have an income on the other side that's just unbelievable, because this to me wouldn't be sustainable for me. I know it wasn't for my dad, who tried to stay in racing, and you carry that as long as you can carry it before you say, I've spent enough money and I can't spend it anymore because I'm for the most part broke. So
that's a good point.
Well, Bob Jenkins does own a bunch of fast food franchises like Arby's and Long John Silver's. I'm not sure if that'll make up.
But he owns Arby's too. I knew it was.
Or maybe not Arby's.
It was Taco Bell, Long John Silver's, A&W. He does. Young
like
Foods
this.
is what
If
he
you're a
owns.
smart
He also owns all of. He also his sons, and I learned this in the case.
If you're a smart businessman, why do you want to keep sustaining these kind of losses? Because it looks to me like it comes up in the argument of whoever argued the charters for the teams that did the negotiations obviously needed him on their side to explain that we're losing this kind of revenue and we're not the class of the field. We could spend more money if we had it. And there's the key to it is that they're not out there winning races or championships, not on a regular basis. Yes, that comes about, but championships, no, because you go back the last 20 years anyway, and it comes down to 2 or 3 organizations that do that. And I just don't see anything that's come up so far in what I've seen that makes a difference. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to be down to the two, jury and the judge. And I think that you're going to have to find out what the strategy is going to be, because you and I both know that, or I think we agree on this, that either side lose, there's going to be appeals, and how long this is going to take. And in the process, what is the strategy of NASCAR going to be moving forward from this, win or lose? What's their strategy going to be? And what is your strategy going to be as a team? Because I would hate to know that I was going to run in this series and some of the stuff that's been dug into and some of the questions that's been brought up, it doesn't leave you with a good taste in your mouth, and you're going to go run in this same series. It's like brothers or family, and it's an environment where you're fussing and fighting all the time, and you're locked in a room and say, y'all settle this, but I don't see this being settled anytime soon.
Well, and when you're fighting, you may be making offense, but when it comes to the business side, you got to think that you're in a more defensive position. Now, let's get to the fans.
When you get into these confrontations, passions usually run amok, and you don't allow yourself to think through these and really think about. You do not, for the most part, put yourself in the other people's shoes to even understand what they're going through or what they're thinking. You're in a heated passion, and no matter how you feel or what you do, you think you're right in all of these things, and you feel justified in doing what you're doing.
Well, for sure. And you feel justified, and it gets really selfish and defensive, right? I mean, that's the thing, is you knuckle down with your people, us versus the world. If you are a race fan, and the teams are a little more defensive, the sponsors are a little more defensive, and I'm talking in the sense of, I don't know how this is going to go. We're gonna pull back just a little bit. We're not going to spend as much on this, the fan experience, the competition. The tracks are kind of the middle group here. Most of the tracks are owned by essentially NASCAR. Go on and on and on. Is the fan experience going to get better? If the teams lose and 23XI and Front Row Motorsports have to decide whether they're going to stay in business, Is the sport getting better? Do the fans benefit? If NASCAR loses and has to pay, I forget the number right off. Again, we'll go to other places for the exact details, but the 200 and something million, not to mention whatever they're going to relinquish that to the teams besides that forever, so to speak. Is the sport going to get better? It could. It could, and no, I'm not saying yes or no. It could, in the sense that if you solve a problem now, it's better in the future. But if you're a fan right now, when tickets cost a lot, when your dollar isn't going as far in general, right, to hotels, to gas, whatever, and you're hearing all of this, are you more likely to go to a race and enjoy it more when this slugfest in Charlotte is over with? And that's the thing, and I think that's what Kenneth Bell was trying to get these people to realize. And then that's what makes me realize, last thing, and then I'll come to you, Devin. That's what makes me, it's just sobering when you realize, hey, I know they all love the sport. They do. NASCAR loves their own sport. The participants love the sport. But they don't love it more than their money. Okay? And that's okay, because you might not love the sport more than your money either. Don't judge them. So just remember that as this goes forward. We've kind of cautioned this the whole time. Go ahead, Devin.
Yeah, and I kind of look at the fans that are the most passionate online, that are either one of the people that, or the group of people that want full season points and all that. Some of those are the same people that want NASCAR to lose this court case, and they have it coming and all that. Well, if they lose this court case, things are going to change. But they aren't necessarily going to change for the better and for the reasons you want them to change. I think people need to realize that even if NASCAR loses this, it's not going to be. I think this court case is bad just overall for both the teams and NASCAR, no matter who wins or loses in this case.
Yeah,
But
and that's our opinion.
the change that people want to see, I don't think is the change you're going to get to see if NASCAR loses. And that's a thing,
right?
This could be really bad if NASCAR loses.
Let me point to something Landon Castle has said numerous times, and he said a lot on this week's episode of the Money Lap. He and Parker Kligerman's podcast. Landon Castle has said and he's a businessman. He's a businessman now. He doesn't drive race cars anymore. Landon Castle said he doesn't buy the argument that if the teams only had $6 million more a year besides the 12 to 14 that NASCAR has given them, if they had $20 million per car in the Cup Series, $20 million per charter paid to them, that was going to solve all these problems and they were going to be satisfied and that they would suddenly turn a profit. He said, "Come on, man. It's an arms race. It's an arms race." And that was Jim France's point. And I'm not defending NASCAR either, because they pocket a ton of money, as we've seen. But Jim France's argument to Denny Hamlin, when Hamlin, as we learned in his testimony Monday, when Hamlin found Jim France, who runs NASCAR, Big Bill France's son, Bill France Jr.'s brother, when he found Jim France and had lunch with him in 2023 in Nashville, I think it was 23, and Jim France said, why don't y'all just spend less money? You shouldn't cost more than $10 million a car to go to the track. Which, for someone that doesn't run the race teams, may seem like a smug statement. NASCAR's hunkered down saying you spend less. The teams are hunkered down saying you pay us more. And frankly, the answer is yeah to both, right? It's a tough thing, and no one's ever going to have enough. That is the human condition. No one's ever going to have enough. So, Dan, when you hear these numbers, granted, we got to adjust for inflation here. $20 million to the number 9 Melling Ford in 1988 might as well have been $100 million, right? I mean, that's almost unimaginable money. But is there a reasonable argument to be made about, we just need you to cover the cost and then we'll be all right? Is there even, or is are the teams at all reasonable in that? I guess, you having run a race team and seen the numbers in your time period anyway up close?
There are too many things that we as spectators don't understand about how all of this operates and how the expenses go. And when you look at how much NASCAR controls of the end product, and they're part of the reason, because I can understand the part where this was sold on a bill of goods as the Gen 7 car will be cheaper for the owners to operate. It'll be cheaper because we'll be able to do this, we'll be able to do that. It was a bill of goods that I don't know that anybody had completely thought through at the time on how the expenses were going to go and how much it would cost to do this. But I really think that when it's all said and done, this is just an exorbitant amount of money, because my dad said a long time ago that the race and the product itself, the expenses went up year after year after year. The expenses went up. The product remained pretty much the same. The expenses came into play from what my dad talked about what the cost was of everything that supported racing. In the early years, we drove to the racetrack. We didn't have but one transporter. We had only one car in the beginning, and then we got two cars. Now you're talking about a fleet of transporters. We're talking about a fleet of aircraft.
I love a fleet of transformers, boy. That would be
yeah, transporters.
Yes.
And now you've got aircraft to carry the teams here and there, and they've gotten bigger and prettier and faster, and because that was the bragging rights among the drivers, was I can beat you back to the airport if you're leaving from the same airport. I'll be there to be there when you get there. So
that was Dale Earnhardt's thing.
It's just,
yeah. So I mean, you can make the argument that if you're going to
got bigger and better from the race, instead of the race cars getting, which the race cars have, but the toys have gotten bigger and better as well.
Well, and you can make the argument that it's just like owning versus renting a house. So, owning your place to live is expensive in the short term, but you
can justify
gain in the long term. Yeah. And with flying, you could say, okay, so even that, remember the article I referenced in the episode where we had Tommy Joe Martins on, which is now 2 weeks ago. All right. Yeah. The Aiden McHugh article, he factored in that teams that needed to fly, everybody at the same time should use the charter services that go to the racetracks, not necessarily owning their own planes, but buying seats on those, because over time that saves money versus flying commercial. If I read his article or remember it correctly, that's what he said. So you could, but you look at it, well, you're flying private to a race. Well, no, I mean, there's already a private that a bunch of people are sharing, and then you could argue if you're Rick Hendrick, if you're whoever, Denny Hamlin, well, isn't it, I mean, me renting a spot on a plane, shouldn't I just have a plane? If you make enough money, have a plane. There's always diminishing costs over time when you own things. I look at Airspeed HQ, which is the race shop that 2311 works from. And now you're not supposed to call it a shop, but no one can penalize me. Come at me. Respond right here, Denny Hamlin. I called it a shop. Okay. At Airspeed, $35 million is the number we learned it costs. Sounds crazy. Don't complain about me $35 million when you say you only took in $39 million in sponsorship. What are you complaining? Well, okay, if that building is supposed to last them potentially decades, is it that crazy? If you want to have a friendly place for people to work, and I mean, a good work environment and state of the art, do you want to start in last place? Like, no, I mean, over time it's going to age. I mean, you can make arguments about every single cost that it makes sense. Bob Jenkins on the stand said that he was insulted when NASCAR said they needed to spend less money per car, because he's like, his costs went up a ton between Gen 6 and Gen 7. All right, the number was like double or close to that. It was a ridiculous number high. And he's like, we don't even buy the ice at the racetrack. They buy their ice on the way there to save a little bit of money. And only up until recent years were they buying all the tires. All right. And that wasn't said, I don't think, in the lawsuit anyway. That's just something we've known over time. Front Row's kind of worked its way up to being where they were kind of forced in a way by having the charters to be more competitive over time. And he goes, dude, we have cut costs. Like, we run our team. They used to close it in November and December to not pay employees, to save money. So it's a tough thing to know. And I just wonder, and we won't get all the way there today. Spending cap makes sense if you can figure out how to enforce that. They have it in F1, but the F1 teams spend cubic money already. You're just saving them from spending a little more cubic money. And how do you enforce it? I don't know. But this is what's getting aired right now. And, with Jordan being on the stand, I'm going to be interested to see, especially when he's confronted with, hey, your business guy said that Denny Hamlin's a horrible businessman or something along those lines. I'm interested to see what he says about that and also, how he regards the sport because he's loved it a long time. All right. But before we move on to anything else, is there anything more we want to get into there, Dan? You talked about the increased cost of the next gen car, but could we argue that it saves money over time, because you don't have to have fabricators and so forth in the shop, or do you just spend that money elsewhere? There's also too, the argument about the anti-competitive stuff, and we learned more about the lengths that NASCAR went to make sure racetracks were not having other stock car-like series like SRX at them. And apparently SRX was close to wanting to run a race at one of the SMI tracks. I think it was Sonoma. I'm not mistaken. No, it may not have been Sonoma, but it was they were close to wanting to run an SRX race at an SMI track, and that got squashed. So, I mean, was there anything that maybe tasted bad in your mouth about anything you learned about NASCAR? All right, before we move on, because NASCAR did get painted pretty well by the plaintiffs as wanting to make sure the teams got in line and that there were not any competing series.
I would say the one thing, and you mentioned, was the sanctioning agreement that they signed with these tracks. No 2 years, even I told Dan this a few days ago. So if Echo Park, let's just say they hosted their 2 races next year, and then they stopped hosting NASCAR races, right? They'd have to wait till 2029 to have any sort of racing series at I guess like IndyCar, for instance, just to say that, to have them race there. That's interesting.
Well, I thought IndyCar and F1 were not included on that. I thought it was stock car-like series.
Well, let's think about it this way. IndyCar has left Texas Motor Speedway. They don't race there anymore. How many tracks does IndyCar race at now that are owned by NASCAR that the Cup Series race at?
I would have to
Iowa. They left Iowa.
Right. I would have to think about it, but I mean, I don't know that that's what. I don't think IndyCar was. I thought IndyCar and F1 were because they're going to race at the same track, like trucks and IndyCar next year and stuff. I don't.
Yeah,
and
but
even
NASCAR sees them.
IndyCar.
They might not. It might not be out there, admittedly, but they see IndyCar as competition at some level. Look at the 1990s, for instance, and all that.
Yeah,
but
I don't know that the agreement said about IndyCar, but yeah, they did put the tracks in a position where if you're going to play in our sandbox, like it's mainly our sandbox for sure. But I think what they're worried, their threat was, and we talked about it last week. We found out the contingency plans that the Race Team Alliance was going to by stockpiling SRX cars and Gen 6 cars, maybe having a Dubai series. Right, we talked about this, Dubai and other series, where they could hold exhibition races. NASCAR was ready in case the teams said, "Screw you, we're not signing the charter agreement. We're going to go do our own thing." But they were ready to go by making a counter move. Part of me is like smart business, and part of me is like, man, it's hard to know where the chicken and the egg is. Both of the teams complaining about costs or NASCAR complaining about the competition, so to speak, of protecting its business model. It's like I understand both ways of it. Dan, but what did you feel? And you talked about this with the testing stuff before when you were at Gresham, okay? But the idea of NASCAR going to the lengths we've learned it's gone to not allow the current Cup teams to be competing against it.
That's part of the deal is the fact that this is something that we knew for years and years. Was the control has always been there, whether it's spoken or unspoken. What lines you can legitimately cross and the ones you can't. The ones that you're going to be penalized, whether it be openly or behind the scenes. You're going to be penalized, and this is the things I think that are trying to be dug into that have yet to be tapped into in the courtroom as to some of the things that may have gone on or will go on depending on the outcome of this, because I don't think anything is going to be settled until you exhaust all of your appeals in this process. I don't think anything's going to be settled. I think the question becomes is, as you said, what does this do for the product itself? Because NASCAR controls so many series that we used to have is now in their fold. They control that, and they
Yeah.
control at least
Or
half of
those
the
series don't
racetracks.
exist.
That's right. So you've got a situation here that you're basically going to be down to no other playground to go to unless you do go to an F1 or an Indy deal, which the
Yeah.
budget's in that. If you think you're spending money in NASCAR, just go to F1 or Indy and see what you spend.
Well,
And it
Indy
comes
is
down
less.
and it comes down to the same thing. Is legitimately my take on this, because you touched on this, and I want to say that technology and the fact that the way the environment has become, and the fact that we started by racing out of a junkyard, that no longer is the case. You can't do that anymore, and it's no one's
Yeah.
fault. It's just an evolution of the process, and the way that things have evolved with technology and so forth has eliminated a lot of the people that were players before. Now aren't players, but technology is
Yeah.
the one, and you can put a cap on this stuff, but you're right. Enforcing this is going to be the problem, because you can find so many ways to spend money to, on the back side, help your team, that on the front side, no, I didn't spend that on the car, but yes, you did. It just comes down to the semantics of the question. And it's just like being
Well,
at Gresham. You try to save teams money. You try to make the rules to where that you can save here or save there, and they don't want to be put into this box. They want to be able to spend that money, and it's like you're fighting yourself. You are hurting yourself by not putting some kind of limits on this to keep from spending money. But it comes down to they're going to spend it anyway regardless, and you think this isn't even feasible, but they still continue. Because another thing was, I was going to do a deal to where that the bodies were changed to the point, and the engines were changed to where that it would save money in being able to hang a body yourself or be able to do the engine work yourself. Well, other racetracks that these cars need to go to compete would not even go along with you on the rules to try to save them money
right.
either. The other tracks weren't in agreement, and it's like it was brought
So
up to
then you'd
me,
have to have a special body or special car for Gresham, which is cost more money.
which costs more money. Okay, even though you're trying to save them money, but if other racetracks would have went along with you, you could have saved them money. But it was like they said about the dirt cars at one time. You could load up on the East Coast and run every racetrack across the 48 states with the
Mm-hmm.
same race car and the same engine package, which you can't do anymore either.
That's yeah. Uh, it trying to get herd cats, so to speak. My wife would love that, right? Momo
Yep.
would love me saying herd cats, but trying to herd cats, especially cats that are competing against each other. And that's why, think about and again, we're not defending. I mean, I'm not defending NASCAR. I've been probably out of the three of us the most sympathetic to teams losing money and that kind of stuff. So I'm not. This isn't an argument either way. But the way this sport emerged from the primordial soup of other sanctioning bodies in the 1940s that were trying to sanction stock cars is with an iron fist.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that worked for that time. Granted, the U.S. had just gotten done liberating iron fist dictatorships or people from those dictatorships in Europe and in Japan, okay? But I'm just saying that it was Bill France essentially saying or it was France Senior, France Junior that said, and I'll enforce this with a pistol. That's, you know, that's how NASCAR. I mean, all that anti-competitive stuff. You go back 1940s. I've read this history stuff. Read Driving with the Devil. All right. and riding with the devil, whichever one, about the formation of the sport and the lengths that Bill France went to eliminate drivers from competing in both NASCAR and what was a AAA owned series at the time that was basically IndyCar now. That's how it's happened. Same with racetracks and the whole deal. And I hated reading about it then, and I hate hearing about it now with SRX. But it's probably true that that's how the sport survived all the other competing little junkyard series that were going against it at that time. And would we have a multi-billion-dollar stock car series now? Maybe we would. I don't know. Okay, so I want to ask, this question popped into my mind the other day when I was walking my dog stalls. And it wasn't, man, is this bag of poop really hot compared to the temperature outside? No. That's a statement, not a question. It's actually, that was a question. Never mind. It's this. No, is there anything that you could learn about the teams or NASCAR in this trial that would stop you from turning on the Clash or the Daytona 500? I don't care what it is. I don't care if Jim France said, F all you hillbilly, toothless crackheads that pay you to sit in my grandstands, or if you heard Denny Hamlin say, I will never sign another autograph again until NASCAR pays me more. I'm just making stuff up, obviously. Is there anything that you would hear that if you knew there was a race, whether it was the Project Gold Code new NASCAR series that they formed, whether it was the Cup teams becoming a competing series, whether you found out that this owner was sleeping with that owner's daughter, whatever. Okay, I'm not trying to be crude. I'm just saying, like, is there anything that would make you not turn on a premier stock car series NASCAR race in 2026? Anybody?
It's going to depend if it costs me money to watch it, or I'm going to tell you that I'm not going to buy any souvenirs.
Wait a second, Dan. Is this a show?
Show me the money.
Me the money question.
Show me the money.
There it is. Mm-hmm. Respond right here. All right. I don't know that there was. Now, if I was a fan that was on the fence and already halfway disgusted anyway because I don't like X, Y, or Z about the sport, maybe you pushed me over the edge or maybe less happy to watch it. So I don't think there's a direct thing that makes you not turn it on. But if you're already kind of just with the malaise, because we're so negative. Oh, these fans are so negative. The championship sucks, and this racing, and they only had 2 passes for the lead. Blah. And every week, that's what we hear in the NASCAR universe from the fan base. There is nothing about this trial either that's making you want to watch it more. And that's a tough one to swallow. By the way, I heard Glucka Bianchi share this. Each race team had to pay, I think it was $300,000 into the DAP, the driver, the marketing. What does the DAP stand for? I'm blanking on it. I'm at the end of my day, boys. But the DAP, the driver marketing points program, right? The teams had to pay into that for their drivers to go out on behalf of NASCAR and earn points. And the teams had a lot of friction with the DAP program because it competed against them wanting them to do their own drivers to do stuff for their own sponsors. I thought that was a little interesting tension amongst all the other things. We're going to leave that right there. Is there anything more you guys want to say on it?
It's $150,000 to get Wi-Fi at the track per team or something like that for the year.
For the season, right?
Yeah.
$150,000 to get good Wi-Fi. So you're telling me it's possible to have good Wi-Fi, race fans who always have crappy Wi-Fi? Is that it? But the teams could just pay a mere $150,000. Respond right here.
Hey, but 30, 40 years ago, you didn't need any of that.
Okay, well, yeah, and 150 years ago, you didn't have electricity.
But this goes to my point.
Okay.
This goes to my point of where technology has evolved to and why these costs are escalating across the board, not only in racing, but in life itself, because we viewed a lot of these races in the last decade or so free on TV, free on the radio, and now you're going to pay, and technology is a lot to do with where we're at, because and you really can't stop technology. That's not what I'm trying to say here. It's just the evolution of life and where we're going as a society, because it's like the county that we're in. it seems like they're just sitting there dreaming up idea after idea of how better to tax you. And this is what you're facing. It's just
As more and
everybody
more
dreaming
people
up
move
new
to Dawson
ideas to get
County.
revenue. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, if you're not growing, you're dying. All right. Race teams, NASCAR, anyone, if you're not growing, you're dying. That is the spirit. That is the capitalist spirit right there. Before you get so angry that NASCAR pocketed a 9-figure amount, remember, they're supposed to be running a business that makes money. That doesn't really answer Dan's question about how is Bob Jenkins losing multi-million a year and still staying in business with the sport, and what was he putting into. I still think that couple million you lose a year that's your pay to play. That's like, hey, I want to be in this sport. In the end, I net lose this amount, but that's my golf game. That's my Vegas money, I guess. If you're using it to, everybody's running a business, but I don't know that many of them it's a great business model, and that's what they're saying they're trying to fix. We'll see. Well, two of the 16 teams, or however many there are suing to try to make a better business model in their eyes. Anyway, all right, we're going to move from that. Well, I'll be interested to see what Michael Jordan said. Heather Gibbs' main deal was they felt like, by the way, and Bob Jenkins said the same thing, like a gun was to our heads to sign the charter agreement September the 6th, 2024. NASCAR produced evidence that said, hey, we told them on August 30th, but the way the teams portrayed it is we got word that evening that it needed to be done by midnight. And Heather Gibbs said that JGR signed it because they didn't want to lose it all fighting over that extra little bit they think they needed. Basically, I'm paraphrasing. And that's good. I think that's going to be a tough one for the sport overall to come back from. Although the sport has argued, NASCAR has argued, we negotiated over and over. At some point, it was put up or shut up. We know, too, that these negotiations were tense, not just ongoing, but tense as far back as 2022. All right? The TV deal was announced November of 2023, and that's when you needed to have your ducks in a row for a new charter agreement, and what the money was going to be in it. But in 2022 is when it was really sour. And now you can understand when SRX started in 2021, why NASCAR really bucked up against it. Part of the testimony from O'Donnell, I believe it was, is that SRX was presented to them as a stock car-ish looking series that wouldn't involve NASCAR drivers, current drivers or owners. Instead, Chase Elliott and Ryan Blaney and Denny Hamlin and Brad Keselowski and Kyle Busch ended up spinning laps, among others, in that series. Not just retired drivers, but current drivers and owners, didn't they? Justin Marks also. So, it seemed like the team started to get a little more rogue, and at NASCAR, they just started to really split apart there, and that's when it got ugly, and here we are. All right, we're already almost an hour into this thing. Some other headlines real quick from this week that aren't going to get talked about as much, kind of covered up. Jenna Fryer is the one that broke the story about Rick Ware Racing supposedly selling one of their charters, and then to the former TJ Percher of the Spire, the former co-owner of Spire, and then that never really has materialized as the Legacy Auto Club, the Legacy Motor Club lawsuit was going on. She found her another one. She's got good sources at Spire or something like that, because Chris Gabehart has reportedly left Joe Gibbs Racing. He was their head of competition. He was Denny Hamlin's crew chief up until this year, to go reportedly to Spire Motorsports. All right, her reporting, not mine, just sharing what she reported. All right, that is a huge deal, and I think this would be a shockwaves kind of, not shockwaves, but cause one shockwave at least kind of story if we weren't having the whole sport in court this week. But Chris Gabehart, Joe Gibbs Racing, reportedly not together anymore after his move to the director of competition made Joe Gibbs Racing arguably the best team in 2025 in the Cup Series. Spire reportedly getting him, by the way. They got Rodney Childers last year. That didn't last long, but they've gotten some talent over the years. Spire's beefed up. Boys, anybody just want to weigh in on that?
Well, let's just
I don't know
hope
what
he
just to
stays
think.
over
Yeah.
there because... Well, I just hope he stays over there
Devin
because
first.
we saw what happened with Rodney Childress.
Childers, yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt. But they wouldn't, they've gotten different people over time, and they were reportedly deep into talks with Kyle Busch about the 7 car, too. That was the word. and it just didn't work out. Okay, so there's Chris Gabehart. Now, on another scale in the Cup Series, Ty Gibbs, it looked like he was going to be a lock to remain in the 10 car for Colleague Racing. And then it seemed like when Colleague announced the Ram deal for trucks, maybe that was a question a little bit, and then they've ended their association with RCR. Well, Ty Gibbs is returning to the 10 car with Seabest as the anchor sponsor in that situation. What did I say, Gibbs?
Yeah.
I said Gibbs that whole time. I wrote Gibbs on my sheet over here. Dillon. Ty Gibbs, Ty Dillon, they were the in-season tournament finalists there that Ty Gibbs won. So, sorry, Ty Dillon, another grandson named Ty, is returning to the 10 car. Dan, you raised your eyebrows about that.
The only thing that I raised about that was just the fact of it just seems like more and more the seats that are not in the elite owners bullpen there are just more, as I say, lateral moves. They just don't seem to mean as much to me as the moves in the elite owners bullpen there in competition. Just doesn't mean the same to me.
Yeah. I do think that Ty Dillon rectified himself a little bit after having just several landings on his face. He went to 2022. He was at what was then the Petty GMS team. Sorry, I was trying to think of the name, but the Petty GMS combined team. He was in the 42 car. Got replaced by Noah Gregson. He went to the 77, ran just back of the pack garbage with that team. Went to the Truck Series, didn't even make it to the end of the season with the Rackley War, number 25. Didn't do anything in those situations. And was he with the Rackley? Yeah, he was.
Wouldn't you love
War,
to know what
but
their
anyway.
pay scale is compared to Hamlin's?
Yeah, Hamlin, $14 million a year. I would love to know. All those numbers with driver salaries were higher than I thought, considering how much I'd heard that those had gone down over the years. Even Hamlin's were, I don't know. But hey, by the way, one word about driver salary. All right, think about driver is the quarterback of each team. All right, wouldn't we say if the crew chief is the head coach and whatever, like the driver's the quarterback. Denny Hamlin makes $14 million. Future NASCAR Hall of Famer, still, was in 30 seconds or whatever the number was, 40 seconds of winning the championship this year, and has had tremendous output his entire career, save for a few years there in like the late 20 teens. Okay? Denny Hamlin makes less money per year than the Braves designated hitter Marcell Ozuna made this year. All right, or something like that. Like 14 million. Think about any other sport, 15 million. That's like a mid-range wide receiver in the NFL. That's like you could be sixth man in the NBA.
How many games do they play a year?
No, well, that's why I use the NFL, okay? Because they play 17 games a year. But the full-time commitment to get to those weekly games is huge. All right? The toll on your body is huge. I'm just saying, like, that is damning to me that Denny Hamlin wouldn't even be in the top 200 paid athletes in the world. That's tough. That's tough.
NFL rookie deals are around $5 million a year.
NFL rookie deals, yeah.
And then compare that.
I'm talking. He's a top flight. Go ahead, Dan.
And then compare that to what we make.
Well, 5 to go. Respond right here, sponsors. Respond right here. McDonald's. Okay.
We make McDonald's money.
We do. We made $14 the other day. That's crazy, man. I still think that's weird. Okay, so yeah, that's all of these are great points about driver pay. By the way, Dan, you wanted to weigh in on Chris Gabehart, and I forgot to let you do that. Chris Gabehart leaving Gibbs for Spire. You had a comment, and then the signal broke up there.
That's one of those things where is there something he knows about where he's at that we don't? And was it a chemistry among the team there, among the crew there? and where he's going to, is that one of those deals where we're just willing to pay this for the information to get us on a different level? Because I feel like these moves like this don't mean a whole lot, because unless, and I've talked about this before, and I've been adamant about it lately, is the fact that unless you have a relationship with a manufacturer, that this stuff usually doesn't go far. It's like Devin said, it's got to stand the test of time, which most of the time it don't.
Yeah, I don't know. I need to learn more about this, and it hasn't been widely
No, not much
talked
said
about.
about it.
Yeah. Sorry, your signal's cutting out there just a little bit. But yeah, there's more to be determined about that, and especially as we hear if he says anything or Aspire says anything. Okay, elsewhere in the garage, Tricon Garage confirmed what had been highly suspected, that they were going to be signing Caden Honeycutt, who ended his year with Toyota and the Stuart Friesen team, Halmar Friesen Racing. He ended with Toyota after announcing mid-year that he was going to be leaving Nice Motorsports into the season. Nice Motorsports cut him. He made it all the way to the championship four. Despite that, after Friesen's injury in the 52 truck, he is replacing Corey Heim at Tricon Garage. Heim not demoted, but he's not fully promoted either. He doesn't have a full-time ride, at least that we know of, next season. Heim, of course, the defending Truck Series champion, one of the most dominant seasons really in any NASCAR series in history compared to the rest of the field. Just the dude shredded. I know Richard Petty won 27 races one year, but still, what Heim did was incredible. Elsewhere in the Truck Series, Nice Motorsports, and I need to click over to the page to get it right, but they've essentially announced a part-time situation on their 42 truck that was driven by Matt Mills last season. Here, hold on, I got to get that page pulled up. But they've actually got a driver on that I've not heard of. Okay, Parker Eatman. He's from the ZMAX Cars Tour there, the series co-owned by Dale Earnhardt Jr. But Parker Eatman's going to be in that truck. Connor Jones. They've also got Tyler Reif is going to be a part of that organization there. Reif was in the ARCA series over the last couple of years, so that's what's going on. We mentioned last week Christian Eckes returned to the Truck Series, McAnally Hilgeman Racing, and we have a slew of NASCAR drivers down Snowball Derby way. I pulled that up. I mean, there's really a lot of them. Eric Jones, a former NASCAR driver, I would say. Johnny Sauter is down there. Derek Krause, who's been in and out of NASCAR circles last few years. They're down there. I'm just scrolling down real quick. I know on the Pro Lay model side, Spencer Davis is involved. Caden Honeycutt, whom I just mentioned, defending winner of the Snowball Derby. Caden Honeycutt is going to be down there running. And, Bubba Pollard, who we know, mainly on the local side. Dawson Sutton from the Truck Series. Cole Raz has been in the Truck Series. Noah Gregson just kind of sneaking his way down there in the number 30 car for the Rhett. I believe that's the Rhett Jones team anyway. James Finch's son, Jake. Kyle Busch, and number 51, prepared by another team. It's not Kyle Busch Motorsports. A few more I'm just looking for. Ryan Preece is down there in a number 64. Ty Majeski. I mentioned Spencer Davis, who's also in the Super Late Model race. And Gilliland. David Gilliland. Now, they're qualifying today, so, some of them will have to run last chance and may not make the big show. And the Snowflake, too, that Dylan Capello, that's a Truck Series crew. That's Lane Riggs' crew chief in the Truck Series, right? Or is that Dylan Capella? But anyway, whatever. There's a Dylan Capello in the Pro Late Model race. I'm just scrolling down a little bit. Isaac Kitzmiller from ARCA. Yeah, so that's going to be fun to watch this weekend or hear about. I don't know that I'll be watching it. I think it's behind a paywall, isn't it?
It's on Flow Racing.
Yeah, well, let me know how it goes, Flow subscribers. Keelan Harvick down there in the Snowflake 125 scheduled for Saturday. And then lastly, too, on a more somber note, I mentioned Eric Jones. His cousin from the Pensacola area is gone missing. 56-year-old Mark David Kilstand went missing in Escambia County, and they haven't found him yet. He went missing on December 1st, several days ago, and Eric Jones shared that via his social media pages the other day. So prayers for that situation. So, boys, anything else on the news iron we need to go through?
Nope. I think that the court system is going to settle out
things
some
are
more
just
stuff
unfolding
today.
Yeah, I'll be looking forward to those recaps. I think there'll be recess over the weekend and then back to the grindstone next week. As it looks like this will go all of next week unless something dramatic happens. I would have thought by now we would not have made it to the dirty laundry part and we would have settled, and just it's tough. It's tough for me to imagine both sides or either of the two sides getting completely what they want. It's hard to see that, and then if so, it turning out really great for everyone. So, any final thoughts, fellas? Devin?
It's funny, some of the things that we've seen come out of the courtroom. Some great sayings, NASCAR asking Denny Hamlin how much he makes a year, $14 million a year, and then NASCAR saying, "Oh, that's a lot of money." Well, I win a lot more races than a ton of other drivers do. And then Michael Jordan,
that's right
before we started this podcast, he was questioned in the courthouse about if he played for any other teams other than the Bulls. He responded with, "I tried to forget, but I did play for the Washington Wizards."
Why would somebody ask him if he played for another team besides the Bulls? What does that have to do? Is that like a sarcastic question or?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
okay. That's okay. That's an interesting one. Michael Jordan being in the courtroom and hearing what's been reported about how he's reacted to some things, including his interpersonal or his reactions to Denny Hamlin on the stand has been. It shows that those guys have a mutual respect at very least, for sure. And there was one juror who got not included out of the juror pool, because he said he was a big Michael Jordan fan and I think he gave him a fist bump or something on the way out or something like that. That's a good way to get out of jury duty. Just fist bump Michael Jordan,
Another thing too, and I want to put the final thought. Remember, Steve Phelps was rumored for that PGA Tour CEO role back in the summer, and it didn't look like he was probably going to be the favorite to take it. I don't know if you saw this or not, but yesterday from Adam Stern, he reposted something on X from Josh Carpenter. Brian Rolap and NASCAR Steve Phelps, a candidate for the PGA Tour CEO role, are speaking with Rich Lerner at Versant's Investor Day. Given the timeline of events that's happened, just speculating here with NASCAR and what's come out in the court.
It's interesting that story comes out this week for sure.
Yeah.
So, but what was the proof who was speaking with who?
There was a thing, so Versant, USA Sports, I guess, Brian Rolap and NASCAR Steve Phelps, a candidate, both were
okay,
speaking.
so Versant Sports reporter Brian Rolap
I'll share
or whatever.
my screen real quick.
Okay, so I'm trying to get the names right. Was there somebody within the PGA mentioned, or is it just that he's a favorite again? Yeah, okay, so... Oh, okay, those two people are. It's like he's a finalist for it. Okay, I see it at a Versant Investor Day. So a Versant sponsor day. Interesting. Okay, well, Steve Phelps, and that was months ago that was mentioned. That was
now
like
it's
months
popping back up again. But just given the fact that what we've seen from NASCAR, maybe we see some changes in the coming months. Don't be surprised if maybe he does make a move like that.
Yeah, I would be surprised if anything comes out before the at least first conclusion of this trial. So. Good points there, yes. Devin's final thought on the Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan barbs. Dan, yours.
I'm just interested to see if Roger Penske gets to testify or gets in the witness stand on Monday. And
I think we're cutting in and out there, Dan. It says, Roger Penske on the stand Monday. Yeah, considering what has come out about the team so far, now we know even more than we knew before why Penske and Hendrick did not want to be on that stand.
Yep.
And Dan, you made a point too, and I don't know if your sound's going to come through, but you made a point when we were talking before the show. All of these business people, and I'm not talking about the Joe Gibbs side. Their business is very much mainly the race team, but the others, Bob Jenkins all the way to Hendrick and Penske, probably don't want the numbers and how much cubic money they make in their other businesses that are far more profitable than this high-cost sport known, because then all you have to say is, well, why don't you just throw 20 more million in NASCAR?
Do we think that potential testimony from Roger Penske could put a fork in this case?
I have trouble believing that Roger Penske is going to be allowed to say much that sways it. But I don't know. That's a good point. I just think these guys are really trying to be Switzerland here, and that's why that's another reason they didn't want to get put on the stand, is to look like they're on NASCAR's side. They had people negotiating on behalf of them that didn't like this deal either. They just didn't like it less than the others. That's all. So I don't know. Dan's signal dropped there, so we're gonna call this one. Hey, my final thought: help other people, whether it's a canathon. I've got a service project going as part of my birthday festivities coming up this weekend for Friends of Disabled Adults and Children. Find a way to help others. All right, we just spent a lot of time talking about people or entities that were in a lot of money. Think about how much money we discussed on this show. Just a little bit of your money can go a long way to help other people. That's where I'll leave it with there. Dan Elliott, you've been great today. So have you, Devin. Thank you both for putting up with me. I'm Doug Turnbull. Be sure to like our Facebook page, 5 to Go Podcast. So, interact with us there if you can, or find Devin and myself on the main social medias. We would be glad to talk to you, and we will hit you next week here with this 5 to Go Podcast. God bless, and be safe out there if you're traveling for the holidays.